Look closely at this image. Look at her face. See the pain etched in her eyes, the dried tears staining her dust-covered skin. She isn't looking at the camera. She's staring into the void, at a future that has just been stolen from her. She sits on a simple wooden chair, fragile and alone, in the middle of a vast expanse of dry, cracked earth. The clothes she wears are simple, worn, the same ones she used for work. Her bare feet touch the hard ground, a ground that perfectly mirrors how broken she is inside. Behind her, a small mud brick house, a symbol of poverty, and further in the distance, a lone tree, as solitary as she is. There is no one else. The silence surrounding her is deafening. This is not the beginning of a journey, it is the end of one. This is the portrait of abandonment in its cruelest form. The question this image forces us to ask is not, what will happen to her? But my God, what did they do to her to leave her like this? How can someone take a person, a daughter, and simply leave her in the middle of nowhere, as if she were a worthless object? The pain you see on her face is the pain of someone who had her heart ripped out by the very person who should have loved her most. If this image and the beginning of this story have already touched you, please subscribe to the channel to discover how hope can be born even from the deepest desolation. And tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. We want to know how far Abigail's strength can reach. Abigail's life in her father's mansion in Greenwich was a gilded cage. The house was a monument to wealth, with marble columns, perfectly manicured gardens tended by dozens of staff, and a garage that housed a collection of luxury cars, including a Bugatti and several Porsches. Arthur, her father, was an imposing figure in the world of agribusiness, a man whose fortune was as vast as the lands he owned. But to Abigail, he was a cold stranger, a silent executioner. She was the stain on his perfect biography, the daughter of Amelia, the woman he had loved in secret and then discarded to marry Audrey, a woman from his social circle. Abigail ate in the kitchen long after the family had finished their meals served on fine china. She was not allowed to use the infinity pool or enter the social areas of the house unless it was to clean. Her half-brother, Aidan, treated her with a cruel disdain. He and his friends, young heirs who wore Rolex watches like toys, would make bets to see who could humiliate her more. "Go get my drink, orphan," he would often shout in front of everyone. Arthur never intervened. His silence was a form of approval, a daily punishment for Abigail for simply existing. Abigail's only connection to her mother was a small leather-bound journal where Amelia wrote poems and thoughts. Abigail read it every night, in secret, in her tiny, windowless room. It was her only treasure, a refuge of words in a world of silence and pain. The final straw came during an important business dinner. One of the guests, a Swiss investor, asked about the sad young girl he had seen cleaning the hallway. Audrey, with a venomous smile, replied, "She's just a girl my husband helps out of charity, the daughter of a former employee, a lost cause, unfortunately." Arthur confirmed with a nod. That night, he decided that Abigail's presence was a risk to his business and his image. He woke her before dawn, dragged her out of the house, and drove her to an abandoned rural property he owned hours away. He stopped the car, took a chair from the trunk, and ordered her to sit. "Stay here and think about your place," he said, before getting back in the car and disappearing, leaving her alone under the brightening sky. The sun rose and punished Abigail's skin. Thirst became her immediate torture. The silence of the countryside was different from the silence of the mansion. This was a silence of death, of oblivion. For a day and a night, she remained there, alternating between the chair and the ground, despair giving way to an empty numbness. When all hope was gone, an old farm truck appeared on the horizon. It was driven by a man named Alistair, a foreman from a neighboring farm who was checking a broken fence. He saw Abigail's solitary figure and, thinking it was a mirage, approached. Seeing her condition, compassion overcame his suspicion. Alistair and his wife Anne, a middle-aged childless couple, took her to their simple but welcoming home. They didn't ask many questions at first, They just gave her hot soup, a glass of fresh water that felt like the most valuable thing in the world, and a clean bed. For Abigail, who had only known cold opulence and rejection, that act of pure kindness was overwhelming. She cried for hours, not from sadness, but from a relief she never thought she would feel. Slowly, she told them her story. Alistair and Anne listened with heavy hearts. They had no money, no jewelry, no luxury cars. Their wealth was time, patience, and an infinite well of empathy. They invited her to stay. Abigail, wanting to repay them, began to help. She learned the hard work of the farm, the strength that comes from the land. One day, while organizing an old storage shed, she found her mother's journal, which she had managed to hide in her pocket before being taken away. Rereading Amelia's poems, an idea began to form. Her mother always wrote about the beauty of simple things, about the strength of seeds. Abigail began to experiment with the seeds she found on the farm. She wasn't an artist, but she had her mother's sensitivity. She started creating mosaics, using different types of seeds, grains, and small stones to form images. They were landscapes, faces, scenes that expressed the pain, longing, and resilience she felt. Anne, seeing the unique beauty of these creations, encouraged her to show them at a craft fair in the nearest town. Abigail's pieces were unlike anything anyone had ever seen. They weren't just beautiful, they had a soul. An art critic from an interior design magazine was passing through town and was mesmerized by a mosaic of a female face with a single tear made from a polished grain of rice. He wrote an article calling her the artist who paints with the soul of the earth. That article changed everything. The article in the design magazine generated a wave of interest that Abigail could never have predicted. Art galleries from New York and Chicago began calling Alistair and Anne's landline. Abigail, adopting her mother's name, Amelia as her artistic name, saw her life transform. Her seed mosaics, which began as a form of therapy, became coveted art pieces, sold for tens and then hundreds of thousands of dollars. She became the mysterious Amelia, the reclusive artist no one knew, but whose work everyone wanted. With the money, her first act was to secure Alistair and Anne's future, buying the farm where they worked and giving them the deed. She set up a modern studio in one of the barns, but continued to live simply, never forgetting her origins. Money, for her, was not a symbol of status, as it was for her father. It was a weapon. It was the power to rewrite her own story. Years later, Abigail, or rather Amelia, was a millionaire. Her name was synonymous with success and originality in the art world, and it was then that she decided it was time to return to Greenwich. She didn't go back to the old house. Instead, she bought the property adjacent to her father's, an even larger and more spectacular estate. The news that the famous and reclusive artist Amelia was moving into the neighborhood caused a stir among the local elite. Arthur, whose empire was beginning to crumble under the weight of debt and mismanagement, saw a golden opportunity. He and Audrey planned a grand welcome party for their new neighbor, hoping to forge a connection and perhaps secure an investment, or at least improve their declining image. They sent a formal invitation on expensive paper with elegant calligraphy. The reply came in a simple envelope. Amelia accepted the invitation. The night of the party arrived. Arthur's mansion was lit up, filled with wealthy and powerful guests, all eager to meet the legendary artist. When the door opened and she entered, a silence fell over the hall. Arthur and Audrey froze. Aidan dropped his champagne glass on the floor. There, standing, was Abigail. She wasn't wearing a designer dress, but a simple, elegant linen jumpsuit that radiated more class than all of Audrey's diamonds. Her gaze was calm, but charged with a power that made her father tremble. If Abigail's journey so far has inspired you, know that stories of overcoming adversity are the soul of our channel. Subscribe so you don't miss the conclusion of this and many other stories that prove our inner strength is our most valuable asset. Your subscription motivates us to seek out more content that makes a difference. We want to know your opinion. Do you believe that revenge is a dish best served cold, or that success is the best response? Leave your comment below. Your perspective enriches our community and helps others reflect on their own journeys. Good evening, Arthur. Audrey, Abigail said, her voice echoing in the deadly silence. Thank you for the party invitation. Arthur, pale as a ghost, couldn't speak. It was Audrey who broke the ice with a nervous, forced laugh. Abigail, what a surprise! We didn't know you were Amelia. Abigail walked slowly towards them, her gaze never wavering from her father's face. There are many things you don't know about me, she said, her voice low but sharp. You taught me that a person's worth is measured by their money and their name, a cruel but useful lesson. I learned it so well that today my name, my mother's name, is worth more than your entire crumbling company. She turned to the guests who were watching the scene, fascinated. This man, she said, pointing to Arthur, is my father. He abandoned me in the middle of nowhere to die because I was an embarrassment to him. This woman, she pointed to Audrey, watched it all and applauded. And this young man, she looked at Aidan, made my life a living hell. They turned their backs on me when I had nothing. Now I have everything, and they have nothing left. The revelation fell like a bomb. In the following days, the story spread through Greenwich and the business world. Arthur's image was destroyed forever. His creditors, seeing the instability, called in his debts. He was forced to declare bankruptcy. The mansion, the cars, everything was liquidated. Abigail's revenge was not to take his money. It was more subtle and devastating. She bought Arthur's failed company for a fraction of its original value. Not to rebuild it, but to dismantle it and use its assets to create the Amelia Foundation, an organization dedicated to funding education and art for low-income youth. She transformed her father's legacy of greed into a legacy of hope. Arthur, Audrey, and Aidan had to leave Greenwich, humiliated. The last time Abigail saw her father, he was a broken man, working as a manager in a small store. He tried to approach her, to ask for forgiveness. Abigail looked at him, without hatred, but without compassion. Forgiveness isn't asked for, it's earned, she said. You threw me away, but I refused to be trash. I became the artist who paints with the soul of the earth. And you just became a sad story I sometimes tell to remember where I came from. That is my revenge. To live the beautiful life you tried to steal from me. She turned and walked away, leaving him behind forever, free from the past and ready to build a future where a person's worth was measured by the beauty they were able to create. What did you think of the ending? Was Abigail's revenge fair? Leave your honest opinion in the comments. If you were in her place, would you have given your father a second chance? We really want to know what you would do. Your story or your opinion might be the light someone else needs to read today. Don't forget to like the video if this story touched you and share it with someone who needs a dose of inspiration.